Hello, my name is Nick James and I'm the event director for #Risk. #Risk is where the whole risk community comes together to meet, debate and learn, to break down silos and to improve decision making. Today, I'm joined by one of our sponsors, Richard Merrigold, director and co-founder of iStorm, a consultancy providing information security and data protection services. Before co-founding iStorm in 2019, Richard worked extensively in data protection and information governance roles in the healthcare and insurance sectors. Rich, welcome.
Hi Nick, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good. I guess I wanted to kick off by asking a question around privacy and security, because iStorm offers advice on both. We've talked many a time about how closely connected privacy and security are, but it can sometimes feel like privacy and security professionals maybe speak different languages. Have you found there is a disconnect between the two disciplines?
It used to be a lot broader than it is. I think there is still a disconnect. Now, when I started working in kind of information governance and data protection 15 odd years ago, there was a very clear divide between kind of information governance and information security and data protection and information security. I think that divide has reduced over time, and CISOs and DPOs and security teams and data protection teams are working a lot more closely together, but they still don't understand necessarily each other's terminologies and the need to do things in certain ways. The main disconnect that I see is kind of in the communities. So the InfoSec community and the data protection community, they are very, very, very separate. And there's no reason for them not to be. They are doing two different disciplines. But certainly online and on LinkedIn and places like that, you don't really see a lot of kind of cross connection between the data protection community and the information security community, which is a bit of a shame, really. I'd kind of like to see more podcasts and more information sharing between those two communities to bring stuff together. I mean, from a language perspective, everyone's trying to achieve the same thing. We're trying to achieve organizational safety. We're trying to reduce risk for businesses by making things safer and by doing education and awareness as well as technical controls. But yeah, I still think there's a bit of a kind of them and us kind of approach, but it's definitely getting better. There's more events like obviously #Risk, Privacy-Security-Pentesting, that have the opportunities to bring those people together and to get those people talking. And I think if we can continue to do that over the next few years, then we'll see a much more useful collective.
So we're seeing improvement. That's a good thing. And #Risk, our strapline, in fact, is that risk is now everyone's business, and everything we're trying to do around it is to actually break down the silos and get people to talk to their counterparts in, whether it be in financial crime, fraud and loss prevention, security, data protection, ESG. They are also linked at the moment, and yet risk departments are still sort of fragmented. So that's our aim as well as an organization, is to look to break down those silos. The risk landscape has shifted, and particularly since the pandemic did so much to change how people work. Obviously, we all suddenly work from home or work from anywhere. Are there any issues your clients are raising now that you rarely encountered a few years ago?
I think it would be daft of me not to say that obviously working from home has been a big issue that I think a lot of organisations haven't ever really come across. So I don't think that's particularly new news. I think the world has become accustomed to remote working, how to deliver that, how to still protect their networks and how to protect their infrastructure. The question that we get asked more regularly now isn't just about home working, it's about proper remote working. So we have clients come to us saying that they've got people on their teams that want to move countries. They want to go and live with family, go and work abroad, but they want to continue doing their role. And the questions tend to be around what happens if that person leaves the EU, for instance. What if that person wants to go to South Africa as an example. Is there an issue with them continuing to do their job? Is there an issue with them continuing to access information that they need to do their job, especially in some of the sensitive organisations that we support? And that is becoming more and more common. I think people are really starting to grasp that remote working can literally mean you can go anywhere as long as you have an internet connection, which is fantastic from the one sense. But then if you've got organizational controlled IT systems, so if you give somebody a company laptop, is that laptop going to continue to be updated? What if that person leaves the organization? How do we get that kit back? Can we remote wipe it if we need to? How do we cover off access controls? How do you provide IT support? And those are the kind of questions that we are now starting to get. So people are looking to us as a data protection and information security consultancy. They're looking at us to kind of understand information health and information security health and doing health checks. How can they make sure that their employees can work in all these different places without putting their assets at risk and without putting their information at risk? And the same challenge comes in there from kind of awareness. So if you can't necessarily get everybody in a room, like for me, training is always best done in person because you can see somebody, you can connect with people. I think it's much easier to ask questions when you do it in person. But obviously, with the way the world is now, most of that kind of training and awareness is done remotely. So you lose that kind of interaction. So the other question that we get is, how do we know that the information has gone across? How do we know that employees understand what they can and can't do? How can we monitor that? And how can we engage with people better? And those are two risks that, while we have ideas and there are things that we can do to help, they're very different for every organisation, and how organisations communicate is going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, it is interesting times. The only constant is change, I think, that we've got at the moment. I'm sort of hesitating over my next question because we're speaking just 3 days after the government have said that they're going to scrap GDPR is some of the headlines. And obviously the larger organizations have systems and processes that are used to dealing with different regulations in different territories and being able to do that at scale. So whatever layers a new UK data protection regulation brings, they will just fit it into their system. But the smaller businesses are going to face a little bit of turmoil on this. And going back to your awareness, my biggest concern is that the message that's going out from central government is, hey, you don't have to worry about GDPR anymore. What would you say to that?
It does frustrate me. Like I don't want this to be a political conversation because obviously everybody has their own views on what happened and Brexit and everything else. I think we are now in a place where, for the government to make it feel like Brexit was a full success, they're very driven on kind of removing what they see as EU laws that provide red tape. And I think one of the biggest, loudest, most publicly aware regulations was, of course, the GDPR. And the challenge with that was when the GDPR came out, it was driven into the media appallingly. Wrong advice was given all over the place. We were speaking to small organisations, small chiropractors who were concerned that they were going to go out of business or they couldn't keep patient records. Tiny little small hairdressers that were concerned about the information that they keep on their CRM, and can we keep notes about our clients? What if they want to have access to it? How do we deal with that? And while that's all relevant under data protection law, it kind of drove small businesses to just have this panic and fear. And I think by tailoring that you're going to take all this stuff away is kind of the government's way of trying to make something look good, which is really frustrating. To change what we've already done, you look back at 2018, you look how far we've come as a country in terms of our regulatory understanding and how data protection is within businesses. We've come on leaps and bounds. businesses have understood what they've got to do. They've implemented it. There's a whole industry that's come up that is supporting these organisations and is providing sensible and useful advice that's helping to protect individuals as well as organisations. And to strip that away just seems really, really stupid, especially when, export is a huge thing for this country. We need to get our goods off the island. We need to be able to sell to other countries. So you're going to have to comply in many instances with European data protection law anyway. So to your point, you kind of say big businesses are used to implementing regulation. But big businesses are very likely to just go, well, we'll just do what EU law says because that's easier and it covers everything, rather than doing a kind of a lesser version in the UK and having to apportion different things for different customer bases and understand where different people sit. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't think for big businesses it's going to make a huge amount of difference, but it will make small businesses feel better when they don't necessarily need to. The other thing that's coming down the line, or supposed to come down the line, is the online safety bill, which is aimed at big tech companies and ensuring those big tech companies are importantly looking after children and are keeping them safe from online harm. So having relevant information in their terms and conditions, being accountable for the information that they're displaying to children. There was a case recently, a teenage girl unfortunately committed suicide. And when they looked into her social media activity, she'd been shown thousands and thousands of posts glorifying suicide. Now, it's now been deemed that those things shouldn't have been shown to her, and quite rightly. But who's going to take responsibility for that? Who's going to take accountability for the fact that a social network provided that information to a child? And at the minute, there is nothing to make them take accountability. And again, the online safety bill has stalled because government changes and people don't want to do things. So we're in this kind of frustrating time where some really good stuff could happen, and we have the opportunity to roll out some proper changes, and we're not doing it because we're in a state of flux in terms of where we are with the government. And I think to add into that the data protection bill, which I wasn't a particular fan of, and then potentially rewriting that when we've got something good already, for me, none of it makes sense.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you on so many of those points. I thought, again, what was interesting, and for anyone that's watching this that's not in the UK, we have this great program called Bake Off, which is watched by millions. And in the middle of the Bake Off this week, it was the first time I'd ever seen it. It might have happened before, but DuckDuckGo had an ad. So, and they were absolutely playing on the fact that we are the search engine that won't track you. So, maybe we are seeing some changes come through and that are going to seep through to the nation's consciousness. But do you feel that risk practitioners are properly taking account of emerging technologies? And in particular, I'm talking about AI. Are security and privacy professionals talking about how AI impacts on their company's risk management practices?
They are and they aren't. There's definitely a discussion that happened and a discussion that is happening. There's some fantastic people, certainly in the data protection community, people like Rowena Fielding, who have very clear views on kind of AI and ethics, and have the kind of the mindset to get into it and understand algorithmic bias and how that can have an effect on different individuals and how it can have effect on data sets. For me, the biggest challenge with AI is that we're being told that it's the future. Everything is going to be AI. We can analyze huge swathes of data. We can use this information for the greater good. We can use it for diagnosis and medical diagnosis, but we can also just use it to understand behavior and patterns and those kind of things. And I think there is many uses for AI, but I don't think there's enough understanding in the wider world about what it means or how it works. When we talk about ethics and when we talk about bias, you have to understand how the machine is learning. Essentially, you have to understand where the artificial intelligence gets its initial information from, because it can't learn from nothing. AI can't just magic information out of thin air. It has to be provided with something for it to be able to make its decisions and for it to be able to learn and to grow. And how that information is input, where that information comes from, how unbiased that information is, massively determines what happens. Now, we're talking about the data protection bill and stripping out GDPR and the online safety bill. But in my view, we're also talking about a government structure that isn't technology focused. Yes, they have obviously very intelligent people that help them do the tech side of things and can help them, guide them, advise them from an academia perspective. But I don't think there's enough knowledge to be able to govern AI, either from a regulatory perspective or from an organizational and private sector perspective, because there just isn't enough information. People don't get into it enough and don't understand it enough. And for me, when you don't understand something that's that big and that powerful and has the potential to change the world in such a significant fashion, not understanding something but then using it anyway can be really, really dangerous. And it's a conversation that needs to be had. I don't know where that conversation is going to come from. I don't know how we get that conversation down into a fashion that people can consume and can understand it easily, but it's something that needs to be discussed more than I think it already is.
Well, hopefully we can all together work to provide at least that forum for the discussion, and look to invite as many stakeholders as possible to get involved. Coming back to #risk, one of our key themes is the importance of communicating risks to the board. And I guess in your experience since 2019, since setting up ISTOM, and your experience pre that working in larger corporates, how do you encourage senior decision makers to take risk seriously?
So it always used to be that you had to scare them. That was the old way of doing things. And I think that mindset has changed. So my last in-house role was for a FTSE 250 financial services organisation, and I remember being invited to the group PLC risk meeting for the first time down in the offices in London. And I turned up and I put a suit on. I had a shirt on. We were a relatively business casual office at the time, and the risk director was outside the door and he said, "Oh, have you got a tie?" I said, "Well, no, we don't really wear ties now." He said, "No, you cannot come in this meeting without wearing a tie. They will not let you in. They will not talk to you." And it was kind of the first time that I'd been introduced to this kind of corporate manner in which it wasn't just what you were saying, it was how you looked, it was how you presented yourself. It was very, very important to the individuals within this room. And what I learned very, very quickly is that they wanted information, but they wanted clear, concise information that they could make a decision on. They were obviously very busy people. Some of these people were non-execs, so they have a less vested interest in kind of the company as a whole. They're there to be an independent. But what they always wanted, and what I've always taken from them through in my career, is that if you're going to talk to the board, if you're going to talk about risk, if you're going to talk about issues within your business, you have to be absolutely clear about what it is that's going on, what the risk is, what that means to the business, and what the business needs to do about it. Very rarely when you're talking to senior management do they want to give you a solution. They are there to fund, manage the business. They are there to deliver the results that the stakeholders, the organisation needs, whatever those targets are. They're there to deliver. So what senior managers want to know is, what have I got to do? Or what are we going to do as a business? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it? I think that's what's kind of carried me through. I always say to my team here, whenever we write a report for a client, the report can be as long as you like. You can have as many risks, and you can articulate what those risks are, and you can put your mitigations in, and that's for the people in the business to go and implement. That's their plan. But what you have to have is a single page, PowerPoint slide size page that takes you 15 to 20 minutes to write, but it takes somebody else 5 minutes to read. And in that 5 minutes, they know what the risk is to the business, how serious that risk is, and what the business is going to have to do to either mitigate it or to accept it. And that's what I always call the executive summary. That's the page that goes to the board meeting. That's the page that goes to the senior people within the business, the directors, the MD, the risk officers, and that's all they care about. If you give them information in that way, it's much easier for them to consume, and it's much easier for you to articulate what it is that you want and what the business needs to do to achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve.
So it's a one-page brief and a tie. Is
the tie was the thing that always got me. Like I could never I work in a t-shirt now, but unless I'm on client side. But it was for that organisation, it was the formality. You're coming here asking for potentially millions of pounds worth of change. You respect the forum that you're in, and I think I learned that early on as well. How you communicate depends on who you're talking to. So your language, your mannerisms, how you approach a topic, very much depends on the environment that you're going to sit in. So you kind of have to be a bit of a chameleon, because how you talk to somebody down in the organisation on the front line is very, very different when you're going and asking your MD for 2 million quid for a change program, or for a change project, or a regulatory change. So you have to learn how to communicate with different types of individuals and different environments. And I think if you can get a good handle on that, you'll always get a better response from your senior management team when you're trying to talk about risk, when you're trying to explain to them what the issue is.
Richard, this has been fascinating, and I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer. But I have one final question that I've asked a lot of people, and this question is very much from a business point of view rather than a personal point of view. But what one thing keeps you awake at night?
I've read this question about 5 times since we first discussed it, and the main thing for us is, I think the main thing for me, I always struggle to not look at what other people are doing. We operate in a very fast-moving industry. We straddle 3 areas. We straddle data protection, information and cybersecurity, and pen testing. 3 industries which are constantly changing. There's constant innovation, there's constant movement, there's regulatory change, businesses' requirements change all of the time. And the thing that keeps me awake from a business perspective is, how do we keep up with that change while continuing to deliver the best possible service that we can deliver? I think we do it quite well, but everything's always constantly moving, and it's hard not to look at other businesses and be like, oh, well, they're doing this. We should have done that, or maybe we did that first, or they seem to have done that better. Like, should we go and focus on that? And I think that's what keeps me awake. That desire to want to be the best that we can and provide the best possible service that we can, but without losing sight of the fact that we do things our own way, as does every other organisation. And that's a really hard thing for me to get my head around, especially when one arm is looking at putting out, potentially even data protection officers. The huge part of our business is outsourced DPOs. Does that change our business model? Does that mean that we have to lose staff? Can we still keep them in if they're representative officers, or senior representation within the business? How's that going to work? What's going to change in the next 12 months? So that constant change and that constant desire to innovate, as a business owner, that's what probably keeps me awake at night.
Richard, thank you very much. Well, as I said earlier, that was fascinating. We could go on for a lot longer, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you again in person in November at Excel at #Risk. And thank you very much for today.
Thanks very much, Nick. Good to see you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.